Ethan Brooks never imagined his life would lead him so far from home. He was a young engineer from a small town in America, a man who liked simple things, like fixing machines, building small gadgets, and walking by the river near his family's farm. But now he found himself on a great ship that traveled across the stars. The ship carried diplomats, scholars, and leaders from many lands and kingdoms beyond Earth. Ethan was only there because he knew how to fix machines that no one else could understand. On one calm evening, there was a gathering held inside the shining halls of the ship. Important people walked in groups, speaking about treaties, trade, and power. Ethan felt out of place among them. He was dressed in a plain uniform, while others wore long robes of silk, fine jewelry, and badges of honor. He stayed near the edge of the hall, trying not to be noticed. It was then that he first saw her. Princess Alara stood at the center of the hall, surrounded by advisors and noble guests. She carried herself with grace, her gown flowing like water, her presence commanding every eye. But Ethan noticed something different in her expression. Behind the practiced smile and polite words, she looked tired of endless formal talk. Their meeting happened by chance. A small device that powered part of the hall began to flicker and fail. Light dimmed above the gathering, and a murmur of concern passed through the room. Technicians rushed to check the device, but they could not find the cause. Ethan, standing nearby, saw the problem at once. Quietly, he walked to the machine, asked permission, and bent down to fix it. His hands moved with steady skill, adjusting wires and connections. Within moments, the lights returned, glowing bright again. The hall applauded politely, though many quickly returned to their serious talks. But Alara kept her gaze on Ethan. She stepped closer and spoke in a voice soft, yet clear. "Yo, you fixed it so quickly," she said. Ethan straightened, a little nervous. It was a simple fault, nothing special. Her eyes studied him, curious. Most men would call it special. You did not hesitate. You did not even seek praise. Ethan gave a small smile. Where I come from, if something is broken, you fix it. That's all. Alara tilted her head, as though she had never heard such plain words before. She was used to men who spoke in circles, boasting of what they could do. Yet here was a man who did not care for attention. A man who worked quietly and left the machine working better than before. Later in the evening, while the gathering continued, Alara found herself drifting away from her circle of nobles. She approached Ethan again, surprising him. Few dared to speak with the princess directly, but she did not seem to care about rules at that moment. You are not like the others, she told him. Ethan gave a short laugh. I'm just an engineer. I don't belong in a place like this. Perhaps that is why you belong, she replied. You're honest. You do not hide behind titles. Her words caught Ethan off guard. He had never spoken with royalty before, and he feared he might say the wrong thing. But Alara's eyes were kind, and she seemed more like a woman seeking truth than a princess bound by duty. They spoke for a while about small things. She asked about his home, and Ethan described fields, rivers, and the sound of rain on a tin roof. She listened with interest, as though these simple images were treasures she had never known. In return, she spoke of her own life, though always with a touch of sadness. Every day she was surrounded by people who wanted power, who wanted her hand for what it could bring them. Rarely did anyone ask who she really was or what she longed for. Ethan listened, not judging, not seeking favor. He simply let her speak, and when she paused, he answered gently. That evening, something began to change in her heart. For the first time, she saw not a subject or a suitor, but a man who treated her like a person, equal and real. When the gathering ended, Alara looked back at Ethan as she was led away by her attendants. She said only a few words before leaving.
Ow.
I hope we meet again. Ethan watched her go, wondering why a princess would waste her time with someone like him. Yet in her eyes, for that short moment, he thought he had seen something rare admiration, not for wealth or power, but for honesty and quiet strength. That night, as the ship drifted through the stars, Ethan lay awake in his small cabin, thinking of her words. He told himself it meant nothing, that tomorrow she would forget him among all the important men who sought her favor. But deep inside, he hoped he was wrong. The next morning, Ethan tried to keep busy with his work. He checked the engines, cleaned the tools, and repaired a small device that one of the officers had broken. Yet his mind returned again and again to the princess. He told himself it was foolish. A man like him had no place beside someone of her rank. Still, the memory of her voice stayed with him, soft and warm, when she said she hoped they would meet again. He thought it would never happen, but that afternoon a message came. An attendant in fine clothing entered the workshop where Ethan was working. The attendant carried himself with formality and spoke with authority. He announced that the princess requested Ethan's presence in her private study. Ethan froze for a moment, unsure if he had heard correctly. The attendant repeated the request, and Ethan could not refuse. He cleaned his hands, brushed the dust from his uniform, and followed. The halls of the ship gleamed with silver and light, filled with guards and servants who bowed as the princess's name was spoken. Ethan walked nervously, afraid he would make a mistake. When he entered the study, he found her seated by a wide window that looked out into the stars. She was dressed in a simple gown this time, without the heavy jewelry or crown she had worn the night before. The light of the stars touched her face, making her look softer, less like a ruler and more like a woman who longed for something beyond her duties. "You came," she said with a small smile. "You asked for me," Ethan replied, bowing slightly. She laughed gently. "I did not expect you to bow. You are not like the others, and I would not want you to change." Ethan stood awkwardly, unsure of what to say. She gestured for him to sit across from her. "I wanted to speak with you without the noise of the hall," she explained. "Last night, you told me of your home. The way you described it stayed in my thoughts. I would like to know more." Ethan felt his nervousness ease a little. He began to tell her of the seasons back home, of the snow that covered the fields in winter, of the green grass that returned in spring. He spoke of his father who taught him to repair broken engines, and of his mother who made warm bread that filled the house with a smell of comfort. Ilara listened with wide eyes, leaning forward as though every word mattered. She had grown up in palaces of marble and gold, yet she had never seen a life so plain and free. "It sounds beautiful," she said softly. "Not because of the wealth, but because of the peace. Do people there truly live without endless guards and formal rules?" Ethan nodded. "We have rules, but they are simple. Most of us live to care for family and friends. We work hard, but when the day ends, we sit together, eat, laugh, and tell stories. That is enough for us." Her eyes grew distant, as if she were imagining such a life. "I've always been told that duty must come before all else, but what you describe is different. It is not duty that binds your people, but love." Ethan said nothing for a moment. He was surprised by the depth of her words. Then he answered carefully. "Love gives meaning to duty. Without it, duty feels heavy. With it, even hard work can feel light." The princess was silent, turning his words in her mind. For a long while, they simply looked out at the stars together. After some time, she rose and walked to a small table. She brought out a simple wooden box. Opening it, she revealed a small instrument with strings. "This belonged to my grandmother," she explained. "She played it when she was young. I do not know many songs, but I wanted to try." She began to play softly, her fingers uncertain, but graceful. The sound was fragile, like a bird's first song. Ethan listened quietly, moved by her effort. When she stopped, she looked at him with a nervous laugh. "I am not skilled," she admitted. Ethan smiled. It was beautiful, not because it was perfect, but because it was real. Her eyes brightened at his words. Few had ever spoken to her with such plain honesty. When the time came for Ethan to leave, she walked with him to the door. Before he stepped out, she touched his arm lightly and said, "Will you come again tomorrow? There is more I wish to know about your world." Ethan nodded, though his heart raced. "If you wish, I will come." She smiled, her gaze lingering on him a little longer than expected. "Then it is settled." As Ethan returned to his quarters, he could not understand why the princess had chosen him for her company. Yet he felt a warmth inside, a quiet hope that perhaps their worlds were not as far apart as he once believed. The days passed quickly, as Ethan visited the princess again and again. Each time their talks grew longer and deeper. They spoke of his childhood, of her lessons in duty, of dreams she had never shared with anyone. Ethan began to see her not as a distant ruler, but as a woman searching for something real in her life. She, in turn, saw him not as a common engineer, but as a man who carried strength without needing to prove it. Yet not everyone was pleased by their meetings. In the royal court, whispers began to spread. Some nobles spoke that the princess spent too much time with a man who had no title, no land, no great name. Others said it was beneath her to seek company with someone so plain. The queen herself, wise and watchful, listened, but said nothing. Instead, she decided to hold a gathering where all visitors and suitors would show their worth. It was to be a test of character, a chance to see who deserved honor. The great hall was filled with people when the day came. Long banners hung from the ceiling, music played, and a crowd gathered to watch. Noblemen from far places stood ready to prove their strength, their knowledge, or their skill.
Ow.
The princess sat beside her mother, her eyes calm but searching. Ethan was also brought into the hall, though he had no wish to compete. He tried to stand in the back, but his presence did not go unnoticed. One by one, the suitors stepped forward. Some displayed swords of fine steel and showed their power by cutting through thick wood. Others recited long speeches about honor and glory, filled with heavy words that made the crowd cheer. A few presented treasures of gold, jewels that shone brightly under the light. Ethan watched quietly, his hands folded. He admired their strength, but he also felt that all of it was meant to impress, not to serve. When his name was called, he shook his head. "I am not a warrior," he said. "I do not have gold or jewels to show, I only know how to fix what is broken." Laughter rippled through the hall. Some nobles shook their heads, mocking him. But the queen raised her hand and ordered him to step forward. A servant brought out an old machine, a device that had been in the palace for many years. It had been broken for so long that no one believed it could ever work again. Many had tried to repair it, but all had failed. Ethan bent down before it, his fingers running gently across its surface. He studied the wires, the gears, the small pieces hidden inside. His mind worked quietly, not thinking of the crowd but only of the problem before him. He picked up a simple tool, tightened a few screws, and adjusted a wire that had been placed wrong. His hands moved with the care of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. Minutes passed. The crowd grew restless, some whispering that he was wasting their time. Gosh. But just as the murmurs grew louder, the machine gave a sudden spark. A light blinked, then another, until the device hummed to life, glowing bright as it had not done for many years. The hall fell silent. The nobles stared in disbelief. The queen's eyes widened slightly, though her face soon returned to calm. The princess, however, could not hide her joy. She leaned forward, her eyes shining, and clapped her hands softly. Ethan stepped back, wiping his hands. "It was not difficult," he said simply. "The fault was small. It only needed patience." His words carried more weight than he knew. In that moment, the hall understood that greatness was not always in riches or weapons, but sometimes in quiet skill and steady hands. The crowd broke into mixed voices. Some cheered reluctantly, others muttered in disapproval. But the princess rose to her feet, her voice clear and strong. "Strength is not only in the arm that swings a sword," she said. "It is also in the hand that heals and repairs. This man has shown more than skill. He has shown humility." Her words silenced the hall. Ethan felt heat rise in his face, unused to such attention. He bowed slightly, not to the crowd, but to the princess, who met his eyes with pride. That evening, as the gathering ended, Ethan returned to his quarters. He did not feel like a hero, yet something in him stirred. The look in her eyes when she praised him remained with him, brighter than any jewel or crown. He lay awake, wondering what path lay ahead. The world around him was filled with power and ambition, but perhaps for the first time, he felt that he had something worth standing for. After the contest in the Great Hall, Princess could not stop thinking about Ethan. While others had shown pride, wealth, and power, he had shown patience and honesty. He had stood without fear, even when people mocked him. His skill was not grand, yet it was true, and his words were plain, yet they carried weight. She had admired men before for their strength or their titles, but this time it was different. She admired Ethan for his heart. The next evening she asked again for his company. Ethan was surprised by the request, but went to her study as he had before. The room was quiet, lit by soft lamps. She dismissed her attendants so they would not disturb them. For the first time, they were truly alone. Ethan bowed lightly, but before he could speak, she said, "Please, no bowing tonight. I do not want to be a princess in this moment. I only want to be myself." Her words unsettled him, but he nodded. He sat across from her, waiting. She looked at him for a long time before speaking again. "You are unlike anyone I have met," she said. "You do not chase me for power. You do not dress in gold. You do not speak with heavy words to impress. You're simply yourself. Do you know how rare that is?" Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "I am just an engineer. I do not know how to be anything else." She leaned forward, her voice softer now. "That is what makes you different. You remind me of what life should be, not what it has become for me. Around you I feel free, and I do not wish to hide this any longer." Her eyes held his as she spoke the words that startled him more than anything before. "How can I marry you?" Ethan froze. Sure, he had heard wrong. His heart raced in his chest, and his mind tried to find sense in her question. "Princess, you cannot mean that." "I do mean it," she said firmly. "I have lived my life surrounded by men who see me only as a key to power. But you see me as a woman, not as a throne. You speak to me with truth. You listen to me. That is why I ask." Ethan felt the weight of her words pressing against his chest. His hands trembled as he tried to answer. "I am no prince. I have no land, no riches. I could never give you the life others could." She shook her head quickly. "Do you think I care for riches? I have been given gold since the day I was born, and none of it has brought me joy. I want a man who cares for me, not for my crown. Do you care for me, Ethan?" He could not look away from her. He thought of her laughter when she played her grandmother's instrument, of her eyes shining when he fixed the old machine, of the way she listened when he spoke of his family and home. He had tried to deny it, but the truth was clear in his heart. "Yes," he said at last, "I care for you, more than I should allow myself to." Her lips curved into a gentle smile, her eyes bright with hope. "Then why should we not be together?" Ethan lowered his gaze. "Because the world will not make it easy. They will judge me for being simple. They will say I am unworthy." She reached out, placing her hand over his. "Let them speak. Let them judge. I will choose my own path, not the one they force upon me. If they cannot see your worth, then they are blind. I see it. That is enough." Her touch sent warmth through him. He wanted to believe her words, yet doubt still lingered. "In your mother, the queen, what will she say?" The princess took a deep breath. "She will test you, as she tests everyone. But if you remain true, she will see what I see. She values honesty above all else. You must only be yourself." Silence filled the room. The weight of her confession hung in the air, yet it did not feel heavy. It felt real, like something that could not be hidden any longer. Ethan finally lifted his hand and closed it around hers. "If you truly wish it, then I will not walk away. I cannot promise you riches, but I can promise you truth, loyalty, and care. That is all I have." Tears glimmered in her eyes, though her smile was steady. "That is all I ever wanted." That night, when Ethan returned to his small cabin, his world felt changed. He was still the same man, plain and humble, yet he carried the promise of something greater. For the first time, he dared to believe that love might cross the lines of rank and duty. The news of the princess's words did not stay hidden for long. Soon, the court was filled with whispers. Servants spoke in corners, nobles argued in low voices, and some even laughed at the thought. A princess asking to marry a man with no title was something they had never seen before. It was foolish, even scandalous. But to others it was a sign of courage, a sign that the princess was choosing her heart instead of power. The queen heard all of it in silence. She did not rush to judge, but she summoned Ethan to her hall. The guards led him forward, and he stood before her throne with steady eyes, though his heart pounded inside his chest. The hall was full, every noble eager to hear what would happen. The queen looked at Ethan for a long moment before speaking. "I hear that my daughter has spoken of marriage to you. You have no land, no crown, no noble blood. What can you give her?" Ethan did not try to dress his words in fine clothing. He spoke simply, as he always did. "I cannot give her jewels or armies," he said. "I cannot promise her endless riches, but I can give her truth. I can give her loyalty, and give her love that is not bought or forced. That is all I have, but it is all I am." A murmur swept the hall. Some nobles scoffed, others looked thoughtful. The queen raised her hand and silence returned. You speak with honesty, she said. But honesty alone is not enough. Do you understand the weight of what you ask? My daughter is more than herself. She carries the hopes of many. To stand beside her, you must not only care for her, but be ready to carry her burdens as well. Are you ready for that? Ethan drew a slow breath. If she asks me to walk with her, I will walk. If she asks me to stand with her, I will stand. Her burdens will be my burdens. Not because of her crown, but because of who she is. I do not love her as a princess. I love her as a woman who has shown me kindness, honesty, and strength. If the world turns against her, then I will stand with her still. The queen studied him, her eyes sharp, searching for weakness. But she found only quiet strength in his words. At last she turned to her daughter. And you, Alara? Do you truly choose this man, knowing the path will not be easy? The princess stepped forward, her voice steady. I do. I choose him not for what he owns, but for who he is. I choose him because with him, I am not a crown or a symbol. With him, I am simply myself. The hall fell silent again. The queen's eyes softened, though her face still carried the weight of a ruler. She rose slowly from her throne and spoke loud enough for all to hear. Then let it be known. A crown is heavy, but heavier still is a heart denied. If my daughter chooses this man, I will not stand in her way. Let them walk their path together, and may they prove with time that love can hold what gold and power cannot. The hall erupted into voices, some in shock, some in anger, and some in joy. But the princess did not hear them. She turned to Ethan, her eyes shining with relief and hope. He met her gaze, and for the first time, he allowed himself to believe fully in what was happening. Later that night, they stood together in the quiet garden, away from the noise of the court. The stars spread wide above them, endless and calm. The princess took Ethan's hand in hers, holding it tightly. Today we have begun a new path, she said softly. It will not be easy. Many will doubt us. But I would rather face the storm with you than live in calm without you. Ethan closed his fingers around hers. Then we will face it together. Whatever comes, I will not let go. They stood in silence, the world falling away around them. In that moment, there were no crowns, no courts, no burdens of rank. There was only a man and a woman, bound not by duty but by choice. And as the night stretched on, their hearts knew what words could not capture. Love, plain and unadorned, had done what no jewel or throne could do. It had brought two souls together, and nothing could part them now.